But this issue of immigration, it's now or never. A half a century of effectively open borders, chain migration, lottery migration, failure to enforce visas. 40 to 45% of the illegal immigrants have violated visas for which they should be deported if not prosecuted. The country's changing. And while the left tries to stick us in a box and tries to say that we are against people of color, I'm not even talking about the nation is changing its complexion. That has nothing to do with it. What's happening is people are coming into this country from the third world in massive numbers. And when they get here, they're bringing their family members in. No nation state can continue to go on forever. Certainly under these conditions. I don't give a damn what business wants. I don't give a damn what the unions want. I don't give a damn what the Democrats want. Honestly, I don't give a damn what the White House wants. This is about the nation. This is about 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now. I can remember back over 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago, when there were only actually a few of us behind our microphones who were fighting off George Bush and comprehensive immigration reform. We had an entire radio broadcast company that supported open borders. Now, of course, its hosts are out there banging the drums. Some of the big hosts in this country, and I'm not talking about my buddies, but some of the big hosts in this country, they were all for immigration reform. Then they reversed course. And you always know there's a trick out there when some host says, as I've said for years, well, play it. Prove it to us that you said it for years. Because that means they did not. I've written 7 books. 4 of them discuss this immigration issue. Actually, 5 of them, now that I think about it, including my first one, Men in Black. And I got to thinking, do you realize over the last half century, every significant change in immigration policy in the last half century has taken place without the support or affirmation of the American citizenry? That we've been deceived about this over and over and over again by Democrats and Republicans alike? The Democrats I can understand. As a party, the Democrat Party as an institution has as its purpose to turn this nation inside out and destroy it and to recreate it like some kind of a socialist utopia. Got it. Wrote about that. It's called a meritopia. The Republicans, ladies and gentlemen, no excuse whatsoever. And I know people are thrilled with the president's political performance today. He's demonstrated that he's got the mental capacity to lead. No more talk about the 25th Amendment. Wait a minute. We needed this meeting today to tell us, why do we react to the left? Why do we react to the media and the Democrats and the ethnic front groups? What we need from the president, what we need from this administration, what we need from conservatives in Congress are articulate, coherent discussions and explanations with the American people before we lose this country. We know what the Democrats want. How long have we been saying it? They're importing Democrats. How long have I said if we were importing Republicans, they would never support this? Every significant change in immigration policy in the last half century, which has promoted open borders, has been done without the consent, the affirmation, or support of the American people, often under cover of darkness. And now we reach the point where we can't deport anybody. If you deport anybody other than outright criminals and you can't even deport them given sanctuary cities, then you must be a racist. The Democrats have boxed us in, but we don't have to be boxed in. It's nothing to do with race. We're not talking about black, white, red, brown, yellow, whatever. We're not talking about that. On the other hand, the importation of people, most of whom are poor, many of whom are illiterate in their own language, how in the hell do you have a civil society like this? We don't even have assimilation. Do I have a single assimilation program in this country? Quite the contrary. Our public schools are full of promoting balkanization and racism and race baiting. Our colleges and universities, the same thing. The Democrat Party, the same thing. The media, the same thing. How the hell do you keep a nation together under these circumstances? So this is bigger than the meeting that took place in the White House, where the president is meeting with people who want to remove him from office. Who is it? Who are the real humanitarians? We are. We want people to know that in order to come here, they shouldn't try and sneak across the border where they might be killed or raped or something horrific may happen to them. We want them to know there's an orderly process. You follow the orderly process, you may or may not get in. You do not have a right to come to America. You do not have a right to be legalized in America. You do not have a right to be a citizen of America. You do not have a right to have welfare in America. It all began changing during the Great Society. Even Arthur Schlesinger Jr. wrote a book about it. A leftist, a professor, a historian from Harvard, who advised Kennedy and the Kennedy family. Even Theodore White, another liberal who used to write books about the presidential elections, he warned it was one of the dumbest ideas. The 1965 Heller Act, Hart-Celler Act, I should say. So we're going to spend some time today going through this. And what I regret is that neither the White House, nor the leadership in the Senate, nor the leadership in the House, all of which we control, make the articulate, comprehensive case for Americanism, for republicanism, little r, for national sovereignty. This isn't an alt-right thing. This is an American thing. It's an American thing. It used to be understood. Now you can't deport people because it might be the father of a child, a mother of a child of a mother. Who the hell knows? You can't deport anybody anymore. The laws are meaningless. We have cities and states in this country that are nullifying federal law. We've talked about this repeatedly. They're using essentially the same arguments as the Confederacy used about the right to nullify. It's incredible. October 2003. The most articulate 3 to 4 minutes, an explanation by a liberal Democrat former governor, Dick Lamm of Colorado, on why this matters. Not a single person at that meeting at the White House today, whether the president, whether members of the Senate or members of the House, not a single person, not one, articulated what former Governor Lamm is about to articulate to you 15 years after he did it in the first instance. Cut 14, go.
I would like to share with you my plan to destroy America. If you think, and some do, that America is too smug, too rich, too self-satisfied, not diverse enough, too white bread, I have this plan. Toynbee, said that all great nations rise and they all fall. And he said, and the autopsy of history is all great nations commit suicide. So here's my plan, 8 parts. Number 1, I'd make it a bilingual, bicultural country. History shows us that no bilingual, bicultural country lives at peace with itself. There's not one, I believe, that doesn't exist with an incredible amount of tension and conflict, if not civil war. My second part of my plan would be to invent something called multiculturalism. This would be 2 parts. Number 1, I would say that all cultures are created equal. It would make no difference and make it impossible to talk about such things as culture. And the second one is that I would really try very hard to make people continue their cultural identity. I would replace the melting pot with the salad bowl. My third part of my plan would be to make the fastest growing demographic group in that country the least educated. I would add a second underclass to the first underclass, unassimilated, undereducated, antagonistic, and then I'd have 50% of them drop out of school, not graduate from high school. The fourth part of my plan would be to get the big foundations to fund, and big business to fund these efforts with lots of money. I would invest in ethnic identity and victimology. I would get them to think about their lack of success was only the fault of the majority. I would start a grievance industry. The fifth part of my plan is I would develop dual citizenship. I would promise people actually divided loyalties, allow them to vote for both Vicente Fox and George Bush. The sixth part of this is important. I would place all of these subjects off limits. I would make it taboo to talk about, actually, or criticize this whole thing. I would make it come up with a word like heretic used to be 200 years ago. Let's say we call it racist. And I would try to accuse anybody of this that would object to my ideas. My seventh part, then, I would make it impossible to enforce our immigration laws. I would develop a mantra, let's call it this, that because immigration has been good in the past for America, it will continue to be good in the future. My eighth and last part, and it's important, is I would censor this book. This man is dangerous. He's on to my plan. Don't read this book.
Unbelievable, right? So right on. So completely right on. And yet here's Donald Trump today. Cut 6, Mr. Producer. Go.
Thank you, Lindsay. You know, it's very interesting because I do have people that are, let's just to use a very common term, very far right and very far left. They're very unhappy about what we're doing, but I really don't believe they have to be because I really think this sells itself. And, you know, when you talk about comprehensive immigration reform, which is where I would like to get to eventually, if we do the right bill here, we are not very far away. You know, we've done most of it. You want to know the truth, Dick, if we do this properly, DACA, you're not so far away from comprehensive immigration reform. And if you want to take it that further step, I'll take the heat. I don't care.
This is incredible to me. This was his top issue, separating himself from almost every single Republican running against him in the Republican primaries. His spin doctors are all over the place saying, well, what he actually meant to say, and his surrogates in media on TV and radio are rewriting and restating what he said and so what. You heard what he just said. Mark, the art of the deal. Ladies and gentlemen, enough with the bumper sticker stuff. The rubber is hitting the road right now. If you oppose where this country's headed, you need to speak out. It doesn't mean you're disloyal to the president. It means you're loyal to your principles. You need to speak out. I am very concerned about what I saw today. All the politics aside, I am very concerned. I saw two parties united against us. If we do get anything beneficial out of whatever this deal is going to be, it's going to be because starting today, you raise your voices. You voice your concerns. Not because you sit back and smile, oh, art of the deal. No. 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 We're losing our country. Started in 1965, like I said, with the Hart-Celler Act. I'm going to walk us through this. 1982, we had a Supreme Court decision out of the blue that ordered that illegal alien children have a right to public school education. Where did that come from? Nowhere. And then one federal case after another. Mainstreaming illegal immigrants. Mainstreaming legal immigrants where states had not mainstreamed them, quote unquote, before. We have now reached the point where we can't even discuss this issue. Where when you talk about deporting people who have violated our law, you're called inhumane, xenophobic, lacking compassion, a racist. We can't even discuss it anymore. And the demographics are turning on us. 50 years of this has worked. The progressives, once again, in another area of public life, have destroyed institutions because they want to change the country and elect more Democrats. Everybody's citing this Daily Caller piece, and they should. The Center for American Progress, a former Hillary Clinton hack, saying, hey, look, one of the reasons we need to keep doing this is for votes. You have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to have realized that's been going on for half a century. Why do you think red states are turning purple? Why do you think purple states are turning blue? This is a big reason for it. And it's intended. That's the purpose. That's what they want. And when you call them out, what are you, racist? Not a racist. I want people to come into this country legally regardless of their race. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Was Reagan's biggest mistake. Biggest mistake. It's time to speak out, folks. It's time to speak out. Here's President Trump at the White House today. Cut 4, go.
There should be no reason for us not to get this done. And Chuck, I will say, when this group comes back, hopefully with an agreement, this group and others from the Senate, from the House, comes back with an agreement, I'm signing it. I mean, I will be signing it. I'm not going to say, oh, gee, I want this or I want that. I'll be signing it because I have a lot of confidence in the people in this room that you're going to come out with something really good.
That's no art of the deal. That's complete surrender. Now, I suspect the president will realize that and try and walk some of that back, but that is very bad. And he did it in front of the media. He did it in front of the Democrats. The whole world heard it. Just give me something and I'll sign it. You kidding me? That's what he said. I didn't say it. That's what the president said. I'll be right back.
Right versus left is right versus wrong. Call Mark at 877-381-3811.
The third greatest president in American history, in my view, Ronald Reagan, behind Washington and Lincoln, cut a deal with the Democrats. They got their amnesty and they refused to build the wall. George Bush cut a deal with the Democrats. They actually voted specifically to build 700 miles of wall and fencing, and to fund it, they've built less than 40 miles. They violate their own laws. They spend on everything and anything. They waste enormous sums of money. But they will not secure the southern border. And the president says he'll sign anything they send to him. It's up to you and me to make sure that whatever they send to him is acceptable to our future. And if it is, you'll hear the same pom-pom boys and girls, the same Rockettes. I told you a year ago. I told you 2 years ago. I've always said. The reverse course and circle back and jump to the front of the parade. I am somebody you can rely on who's going to stick to his positions. Not because they're hard, not because they're right-wing. To understand conservatism is to understand, humanity. It has nothing to do with being hard or right-wing. They're based on experience. Nations collapse, and they typically fall from within. And it's the voices like yours and mine and a handful of others who speak out at times like this, who are typically overwhelmed, but are to be remembered, quite frankly. Now let's begin. Let's get into this issue. The status argument for comprehensive immigration reform reduces to this. America is a nation of immigrants. The founding and settling of the nation came about because of immigrants who braved dangers to come to this country and risked everything to build the prosperity we enjoy today. Certainly this is true as far as it goes, as I explained in Liberty and Tyranny. Of course, to say this is a nation of immigrants is to say every nation is a nation of immigrants. Mexico, the source of most immigrants in the United States today, is a nation of Spanish and other immigrants. The implication is, however, that both legal and illegal immigration, no matter how extensive, is another moral imperative justifying the transformation of the civil society. This is not so. Once again, the Declaration of Independence provides guidance on this issue. It states, in part, that to secure these unalienable rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Have we consented to any of this? How can chain migration be something we consent to? We've never consented to that. A lottery? Most of us hadn't even heard about this until a few months ago. We consented to that? We consented to sanctuary cities? We consented to 40 or 45% of the illegals in this country violating their visa requirements and staying here? When did we consent to this? More to the Declaration. It is the right of the people to alter or abolish the government and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Have the governed, the American citizens, consented to the current state of legal and illegal immigration in this nation? Do current immigration policies and enforcement practices affect the safety and happiness of the people? Yes. The statists, whether they be Democrats or Republicans, they insist that in particular the 21st century immigrant in the United States is the spiritual heir of the immigrants who helped build the nation. His motives are as noble and his ambitions as honorable as those of the founders. And to deny him access to America's bounty and freedom displays an un-American meanness of character and is a renunciation of America's heritage. Even worse, the statist portrays the immigrant as universally more virtuous than the citizen. He's said to aspire to and indeed achieve a higher position of worthiness than the citizen, for he's doing jobs Americans won't do, quote unquote, is a person of faith, a strong family man, and so forth. And the citizen is said to owe his sustenance to the immigrant, who is said to build his home, maintain his property, harvest his food, raise his children, go to his wars, and so forth. Therefore, even the illegal immigrant deserves a privileged status in society in the sense that his lawbreaking is said to be a personal necessity and societal value. So he must be urged out of the shadows and into the light. He must be celebrated as a role model, and his virtuousness must be rewarded with citizenship. Now, for we conservatives, this is a truly odd formulation, since it demeans the citizen and his paramount role in American society. It is the community of citizens who consent to be governed and for whom the government exists in the first place. The principal responsibility of the government is to the citizen. Otherwise, the government ceases to be legitimate. To say that the citizen, who is in fact primarily responsible for the nation's character and the culture to which the alien immigrates, is less valuable to American society than the immigrating alien, is nonsensical. No society can withstand the unconditional mass migration of aliens from every corner of the earth. The preservation of the nation's territorial sovereignty, the culture, language, mores, traditions, and customs that make possible a harmonious community of citizens dictate that citizenship be granted only by the consent of the governed, not by the unilateral actions or demands of the alien through chain migration and so forth. And then only to aliens who will throw off their allegiance to their former nation and society and pledge their allegiance to America. Claremont Institute's senior fellow and California State University professor at the time, Edward J. Erler, reflecting Aristotle's observation, wrote, "A radical change in the character of the citizens would be tantamount to a regime change, just as surely as a revolution in its political principles." So, folks, the government, therefore, is not only justified but obligated to qualify immigration to those most likely to contribute to the well-being of the civil society, and to create the conditions in which aliens of differing backgrounds can be absorbed into the American culture through assimilation. Now, history. In 1965, as part of the Great Society, when the Democrats controlled everything by supermajorities, the statists did, in fact, lay the foundation for radically altering the character of American society and the relationship of the governed to their government. When he signed the Hart-Celler Act, President Lyndon Johnson said, "This bill that we will sign today is not a revolutionary bill. It does not affect the lives of millions. It will not reshape the structure of our daily lives or really add, importantly, to either our wealth or our power." And during the debate over the bill on the floor of the Senate, Senator Ted Kennedy claimed, First, our cities will not be flooded with 1 million immigrants annually. Under the proposed bill, the present level of immigration remains substantially the same. Secondly, he said, the ethnic mix of the country will not be upset. Contrary to the charges in some quarters, the bill will not inundate America with immigrants from one country or area or the most populated and economically deprived nations of Africa and Asia. That's what he said. Johnson, Kennedy, and the other statists during the Great Society were obviously wrong. It's hard to believe they were not intentionally deceiving the public. In 1964, Republican vice presidential candidate Representative William Miller of New York well understood the overall increase in immigration that would result from the 1965 Act. He said, we estimate that if the president gets his way and the current immigration laws are repealed, the number of immigrants next year will increase threefold and in subsequent years will increase even more. The bill that was passed abolished the decades-old policy of national quotas, which was said to be discriminatory because it favored immigrants from Europe, usually Britain, Ireland, and Germany, over the Third World. Thus, it increased immigration levels from each hemisphere, setting in motion a substantial increase in immigration from Latin America, Asia, and Africa, to the detriment of previously favored aliens from Europe. The bill also introduced for the first time, I'm just giving you history, a system of chain migration. It comes from this law. As the Center for Immigration Studies notes, gave higher preference to the relatives of these new citizens and permanent resident aliens than to applicants with special job skills. So the historical basis for making immigration decisions was radically altered in 1965. The emphasis would no longer be on the preservation of American society and the consent of the governed. Now, aliens themselves would decide who comes to the United States through family reunification. With the elimination of national quotas and the imposition of chain migration, aliens immigrating to the United States were poorer, less educated, and less skilled than those who had preceded them, a pattern that continues now to this day. Now, the late author Theodore White, who I mentioned earlier, who was no conservative, he wrote that the Immigration Act of 1965 changed all previous patterns, and in so doing, probably changed the future of America. He wrote it was noble, revolutionary, and probably the most thoughtless of the many acts of the Great Society. In the 1960s, Cesar Chavez, one of the founders of the United Farm Workers Union, the UFW, vehemently opposed illegal immigration, arguing it undermined his efforts to unionize farm workers and improve working conditions and wages for American citizen workers. The UFW even reported illegal immigrants to the Immigration and Nationalization Service at the time. In 1969, Chavez led a march accompanied by Ralph Abernathy, president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and former right-hand man to Martin Luther King Jr., and Senator Walter Mondale along the border with Mexico, protesting the farmers' use of illegal immigrants. Oh, time has changed. Most of the unions have changed course, and today they lobby to confer amnesty and ultimately citizenship on illegal aliens. These include the American Federation of Labor, Congress of Industrial Organizations, the AFL-CIO, American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, Farm Labor Organizing Committee, Hotel Employees and Restaurant Employees International Union, Laborers International Union of North America, and on, and the United Farm Workers. Mr. Chavez must be turning in his grave. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, for the unions, this is new membership, new dues payers. For the Democrat Party, this is new Democrats, new voters. So the unions view the large influx of both legal and illegal aliens as a new source of political clout that favors their allies in the Democratic Party, potentially adds membership to their own dwindling numbers. They came to the same realization as historian Samuel Lebel, who noted that the voting age children of the first Great Migration constituted the big city masses who furnished the votes which re-elected Franklin Roosevelt again and again, and in the process ended the traditional Republican majority in this country. And there can be no doubt, as a practical matter, that the status, benefits for votes, promises, is an attractive, albeit destructive enticement. I just told you the Center for Progress, American Progress, that left this organization, the Daily Caller reported, their talking points are, look, we need this for votes. Despite President George W. Bush's and Senator John McCain's long record of advocacy for more legal immigration and amnesty for illegal aliens, it's not enough to compete with the status agenda. In 2004, 44% of Hispanics, for example, voted for Bush for president, 53% for John Kerry. In 2008, 31% of Hispanics voted for John McCain for president, 67% voted for Barack Obama. The status tolerates the illegal aliens' violations of working, wage, and environmental standards because the aliens' babies born in America are under the interpretation of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which I disagree with the interpretation. Still, they're treated as United States citizens. And under this 1965 Hart-Celler Act I'm talking about, upon turning 21 years of age, the child could sponsor additional family members for citizenship. From the status perspective, the pool of future administrative state constituents and sympathetic voters is potentially bottomless. That's exactly what's going on here today. Exactly. I've got a lot more. I hope you'll stick with me because what took place in the Oval Office today, to me, is enormously troubling. I know a lot of people are going to say, don't worry, Mark, we got the art of the deal, he knows how to get him, and so forth and so on. Let me ask those of you who think that way this question. Is it not the job of the Republican leadership in the House and the Senate and the President of the United States to persuade the American people to our position? To saving this nation state? To saving Americanism and the American culture? Not based on race, not this alt-right stuff. Just these are views and positions that history, and ancient history, demonstrates to be true.